You're listening to The Unstoppables, where each week we show you how to overcome obstacles and transform the sting of failure into the reward of growth. And now, here's your host, best-selling author, keynote speaker, and CEO, Bill Wooditch.
Today I have a special show on The Unstoppables. The Unstoppables is that place you tune in to find out, how do these people do what I want to do? How do they make their way forward? How do they overcome adversity? And most important, how did they learn from failure to move always forward? Today, I have the king of brand attraction on my show. This is the king of the world, Muhammad Ali. He stays in my office for a significant reason, because he was one person that would brag, and he would put it out there and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And then you know what he did? He went out and did it. So he had to back up that flamboyant style with substance. Today, my special guest is AJ Adams. He has both style and substance, and he can punch real hard. AJ, welcome to the show.
I appreciate that, Bill. Glad to be here.
Hey, let me start out with a humble brag first, okay? Before we get into your story from janitor to CEO, let's talk about what you just accomplished. It was as recent as last year, I think November, when you were listed by Apple as number 42 in marketing podcasts. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been doing a hard push to really get the brand domination show out there, and the response has been fantastic. We had a lot of people leave reviews, listen to the show, and we've since doubled our downloads. And we hit number 42, a really competitive category with people like Amy Porterfield, social media marketing world, and we cracked number 42.
That is huge. That's a world that is proliferated with people who want to be, people who try. I mean, it's just thousands and thousands of people. So you've made your way forward. You are a brand dominator. Let's talk about what personal branding means to you.
Yeah, so it's really interesting, and I'm in the process now of even niching down even more, because the term personal branding is so misunderstood, and I've realized that so many people, when they think of branding or personal branding, either term, they think of logos and websites and the business of pretty, when really a brand is 90% strategy and it's 10% the creative. You've got to have the right strategy. It's like a Ferrari. That's my dream car. In the next couple of years, I will get a Ferrari, but I'm not going to pay $300,000-$400,000 for a Ferrari because it looks nice. That's just part of the appeal. Ultimately, it's got to have that engine. It's got to have the power behind it, and that's the same for a brand. It's got to look good, but that comes last. You start with the engine that drives it, building the machine, and I like to call it the money-making marketing machine. And I created a real specific method called the D6 method for building brands. And it's what I've used when I've worked with a celebrity, millionaire CEO, $100 million brand. It starts with the strategy. What's the story? Who are you reaching? Where's their attention? How do you capture it? And then how do you cultivate a relationship with them to ultimately turn those followers into customers and clients?
I love the dream. I think you'll grab the wheel of that Ferrari. I think you'll have fun with the paddle shifts, and you'll have a great time with it.
Absolutely.
Let's dive down on story. You were a janitor. Take me from that point, that dark point in your life, to how you created this way of life for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So the time when I was a janitor, I had actually started my entrepreneur journey as a motivational speaker. And when I started, no one knew who I was. So I had to figure out, how do I get people's attention, get them to notice me, and more than that, get them to see the value of putting me on their stage. And about a year after I launched that business, my wife and I and our two kids at the time moved to Southern California to start working with a church there. A good friend of ours had started, and had a moment where in the parking lot of a Taco Bell restaurant, I realized I had no money. I couldn't buy lunch for my family. And that was a pivotal point for me when I realized I've got to take control. I've really got to take control, make some changes. So I got a second job working as a janitor. And during that time, I went all in. I had to adopt that unstoppable mindset, or what I learned in martial arts, that indomitable spirit. And I spent every waking moment when I wasn't scrubbing a urinal or mopping floors, I was reading books by Robert Kiyosaki, because I identified why I was in that situation. I didn't understand finance. I didn't understand money, business, mindset, success. So I started studying all of those things obsessively. And at the same time, while working as a janitor, I was writing my first book, which I later published, a book about success. And the obvious question is, why would you write and publish a book about success when you're not successful? Because I knew that one day I would. I was that convinced of it. So I was really documenting the steps I was taking to do that, so that one day I could share it with someone. And a couple of years later, I was standing on a stage in front of 6,000 plus people, sharing that exact story of that I wrote in that same book.
That's why I think you're going to turn those intentions into dollars. And I think that's what you've done in being able to create a vision that you then were able to do the hardest thing, I think, for most people, which is execute. You know, for some, they have a vision without execution. That's just a fantasy. But you actually had that vision and you were able to execute it. Something I relate to, AJ, and I think this is important for anyone, and I say anyone globally, is that you found yourself in a parking lot without money. You found yourself up against the corner. Instead of feeling sorry for yourself, going to your knees, you fought your way forward. You took those requisite actions, learning, applying, looking to different mentors, different sources, whether it was the written page and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, whatever that page was, whatever that was, wherever you found inspiration, you burned your boat, knew there was no way back, the only way was forward, and took every action to do just that. That takes courage, my friend, and for that I applaud you.
I appreciate that. And, that's something I learned. A lot of what I do in business and life, I learned through martial arts. We often, what I've noticed with successful people, and I saw recently an article about this, that highly successful people tend to have done three things. They were either in organized sports, they were studying martial arts, or they were in some form of military or law enforcement. And it's often true because there's that discipline that comes with that. And in those moments where I was in my deepest struggle, I remembered an experience I had called the bull ring. And this used to be very closed door, very secretive. But when I studied martial arts, there was our black belt examination. And it was a 3-hour process. First, we were drilled mentally. Then we were drilled physically for an hour. Then the final hour was us testing if we had the heart. And the 28 other black belts, first degree through 9th degree, that were on the panel testing me, all gathered in a circle. I walk into the room, all of them have their fight gear on, and I was given one instruction: do not stop fighting. And for the next 5 to 7 minutes, I was in that circle fighting literally everyone. I was getting jumped, and they knew what they were doing. It was safe, but it was to push me. And I remember waking up on the floor multiple times, but the last time I woke up on the floor, knocked out, my instructor picked me up and he asked me, do you want to quit? And dazed and confused, I kind of mumbled, no, sir. He asked me again, Mr. Adams, do you want to quit? And I finally came to and I yelled, no, sir. And he said, good. And then he actually punched me in the gut, pushed me back in, and we went for another few minutes, because that test was about, do you have the indomitable spirit? Are you unstoppable when you know you're losing? And I've taken that same mindset to business, to life, and everything I do, because you have to. You either give up or you keep pushing through.
And I relate to that with you. I would tell people that your body has to be able to cash those checks that your mind writes. So I think that connection of body, spirit, mind is that indomitable force, is that extra force you have, the force multiplier that moves you forward. You and I relate on a lot of levels. That's definitely one of them. You have over 125,000, there's no typo here, followers across social media.
Right.
More than 29 million impressions, and your content has reached in excess of 15 million people worldwide. That's a long way from being broke in a parking lot.
Yeah, we're taking it to a whole nother level in 2020. That was just a test. In 2020, those numbers are going to jump.
You're the bestseller of two books. Tell me about your books.
So my first book was the book I wrote while I was a janitor in that dusty 40,000 square foot warehouse. That's called The Other Half of Student Success. At the time, I was a youth motivational speaker. So I wrote that book to really empower students that's who I was working with. The second book I actually wrote for a gentleman named Bert Ullman. And when I say that, I sat and spent hours with him. He was a business partner of mine. We worked together with some of his celebrity clients. He's worked with people like Jennifer Lopez, Nicki Minaj. He's done $3.5 billion deals for people like that. Through my personal brand, we connected, became partners. And in sitting with him, I took his methodology, his philosophy on branding, and put that into a book, fleshed it out. We authored that, published it in October. That hit international bestseller status on Amazon last year. And now I'm working on book number 3.
Congratulations. I watched a movie once, and one of the characters was a writer, and he said, everyone has one book in them, but it's really hard to pull book 2 out. So you're moving forward with 3. Why should an entrepreneur, why is it important for an entrepreneur to build a personal brand?
You know, that's an interesting question. And here's one thing people don't realize. Personal branding is nothing new. This is, when it comes to business, when it comes to sales, when it comes to marketing and branding, it's the exact same game we've been playing for decades. We're just playing on a different field now with social media and the internet. So decades ago, before the internet, before social media, you would go to door, you would go to networking events, you would introduce yourself to people, you would build relationships. People do business with people, and they always have. Now with social media, we're doing the same thing. And those people who are winning on social media, on the internet, are those who understand how to take the same principles of connecting with people and building relationships, something as simple as, hi, my name is AJ Adams, and do that online. So if you don't have a personal brand, you're not giving your potential customers, whether that's directly the consumer or it's the CEO or business leader in an organization, you're not giving them a person to connect to, a person to trust. And if there's not trust there is a relationship, and a relationship is a real currency of business. So why do you need a personal brand? Because that's how it's always been. We're just doing it a little differently now.
One more time. Relationship is what?
The real currency of business.
Absolute truth. Relationship is the real currency of business. How did you earn the name the King of Brand Attraction?
I earned the name the King of Brand Attraction, same way Muhammad Ali earned the title I'm the greatest. I made it up because you've got to have an insane, irrational level of confidence and claim it. And then, like you said at the beginning, you got to claim it and then go do it. So Muhammad Ali was saying, I'm the greatest, when he was a 19-year-old Negro kid from the South.
Louisville.
From Louisville.
Louisville Lip.
No one knew who he was.
No, I love Ali. I'm a historian. Yeah. Confidence and claiming it. That's the first time I put it that way. I think confidence is the most important thing you can bring to the table. You have to have competence that comes behind it or with it, but I can hire some competence. But if I'm not confident that I can get my competence to work for you, make a difference for you, and build value for you, no one's going to ever listen to my story. They're not going to stick around. They're going to go with the person that has the confidence. You got to bring the substance. Absolutely. But so many people have tremendous substance, AJ, but they have no confidence to deliver that, and we turn them out. We tune them out. We don't do it. You say, my friend, you got to be confident, and you got to claim it. You got to stand in it. Man,
absolutely.
How important is that?
That's essential. If you're not doing that, I mean, here's the thing that we're often told is, we're often told that we have to be humble. And if you look at the definition of humility, it literally means to downplay who you are, to minimize who you are. Here's the bottom line. And Bill, I teach this to anyone in marketing and branding. There is no room for humility in marketing. That is not the place to be humble. That is not the place to be humble. You have to find that delicate balance between bragging like Muhammad Ali and at the same time being approachable, personable, not humble. I mean, I look at someone like Grant Cardone, for example. He's got the jet. He's got the mansion. But one thing I always hear him say that I appreciate, he always says, but you can have it too. And here's how. Here's what you can do to get it as well. So you've got to be able to claim it and then follow it up, but always remember where you started and keep in mind that there are people who are where you were, right, and who want to be where you are.
And success is leaving those clues. Here's something this is one way about I've always been able to differentiate the difference between being confident, claiming it, and then not being arrogant. It's this. Ego with talent is perceived by people as confidence because you're getting things done, your ego's out there, but you're actually coming through. Ego without talent, arrogance.
Yeah.
You found to be a fool. I mean, and that is how I really have defined it. Speaking of definition, how do you define, in your terms, AJ Adams, not from a book, how do you define success?
Success, being able to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, where you want to do it, with who you want to do it, whenever you want to do it.
Ooh, it's freedom. It's the freedom to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And there is no better feeling, and you got to work for your freedom.
Absolutely.
No one gave you anything. You took it. You claimed it. You went out there and made it happen for yourself. You're a great object lesson for people who are trying to get into social media, who are trying to get into business as an intrapreneur, to become that entrepreneur. You became that by claiming it, by intention. And then that intention became execution. Those ideas became reality. And I think that's a great story for people to tap into. Speaking of story, where can we find you?
You can find me on ajadams.biz, and you'll see links to all my social media, everywhere to connect with me. And but what you said is absolutely true. Freedom, no one can give it to you. They can take it away though, and you can give it up. But if you want it, you got to go and take it. You got to be unapologetic. My motto in business is be ethical, but be ruthless.
Oh, that's great.
That's another thing I learned from martial arts. I'm a peaceful person. I'm a loving person. I've jumped in fights to help people who were being abused, in 2-3 situations in my life. But if you come into my house, you threaten my family, you threaten my friends, I will be ethical, but you will not leave there. I will be ruthless.
Ethical and ruthless, we say the same thing about creativity. We want you to extend those boundaries of creativity and thought and action, but we don't want you to trespass on ethical guidelines. That is a non-negotiable here.
Exactly.
So you're living in the same way, and I think you're living in congruence with your thought, your word, and your action. And when you do that, freedom ensues, happiness ensues, because you're free to express, and you can find and create those conditions for happiness. At least that's what I found, AJ.
Absolutely, I agree.
What do you consider, you probably have a few, I've got a ton of them. What do you consider to be your biggest failure, your crash and burn, and then how did you come out like the phoenix out of the ashes?
Wow. So I have to pick one. Let's see. There's a list of them. My biggest failure, I would say, has really been the mindset of not believing that there is abundance. Because at every failure I've had, it came down to that, believing that options were limited, that my skill was limited, that my opportunities were limited. And from that came fear, and from that fear came, not a lack of execution. But I've since learned that your greatest opportunity is hidden behind your greatest fear. That thing that you are petrified of, attack that, run at that, go full on, no holds barred toward that fear, because there's something great lying behind it.
One more time, and you're probably the most repeated guest I have because the takeaways are golden. I want people to take these and apply. Your biggest opportunity is hidden behind your biggest fear.
Exactly.
You gotta have a T-shirt made up with that. There's a brand that's a for you.
That's another branding nugget. Hey, you've got to, I call them quotables. If you build a brand, you've got to have those quotables, because if you're easy to repeat, you're easy to remember, and you're easy to refer.
I had an interview with Tim Story, and he gave me something that I remember, I take away, and I use often on stage and often in these shows, is that he came from a place of small ceilings, of short ceilings, where you thought the ceiling wasn't only the place that was your actual house, but that's where you thought you could go. So you thought
Right.
that you were only deserving of and only worthy of those kind of limited ceilings. And when he blew the top off that ceiling, he just became Tim Story. So and that I think is the same kind of vision that you had, that you blew up, because I think the greatest adversary we have is ourselves, in our
Absolutely.
own self-doubt. How did you overcome those seeds? Because they're there for all of us. But how did you stop watering the seeds of self-doubt and become that person that then stood with confidence and clarity and punched forward?
So the truth is that's something that I am consistently doing even now. And it starts with being humble enough. And this is where humility comes in with yourself, being humble enough to acknowledge that's a weakness.
Yeah.
I have this broken mindset. And then being willing to bring in other people. I have my best friend of 28 years. We have a weekly call and we really talk multiple times a day. We keep each other in check. Every day I run a mile. Every day I write down my goals. Every single day I'm writing what I'm weak in. And I'm identifying those weak mindsets. And then I'm taking action, whether it's reading a book or it is writing out mantras or affirmations, because we believe what we've been told from childhood, and then we adopt that narrative, we tell it to ourselves, and it becomes ingrained. So we can do the exact same thing. Change your narrative, start telling that to yourself, repeating it, and you'll watch your mindset change.
Another absolute platinum. Absolute. We are buying that narrative that we've been fed, the one that we believed and who we are. We're wrapping ourselves in that version of ourselves, that we can change the narrative and change the course of our life, change the trajectory of our life. You know what I love about you, and I really do admire this, is you're real. I met you before. I've been on your show before. You're a great show, but you're real. You come at it with vulnerability. Hey, this is what I've effed up on. You come at it with a humble brag. This is what I'm doing. All right. And you come real. You give great takeaways. You give great advice. So if I want to work with you, tell me how I would work with you and what I'm going to get from AJ Adams when I say I want to expand my platform. I want to build my brand. How do I do it, and what am I going to get?
Absolutely. And first, I appreciate the bill. I appreciate those words. And I've realized being fake is too much work. And the people who are actually successful, they see through the fake, and you rob yourself of opportunity. You're not fooling anyone. But if you're real, people see that. For people who want to work with me, they can go to my website, ajadams.biz, and you can reach out to me there. When you work with me,
ajadams.biz, B-I-Z?
B-I-Z.
Okay.
ajadams.biz. And when you work with me, I'm very selective. So I don't work with everyone unless I am absolutely convinced that, one, you're ready to work with me, and two, that I can get you results. As long as we have those two things, we'll move forward. And what that looks like is I focus on three key areas: influence, impact, and income. Everyone wants the income in business. To do that, you've got to make a massive impact. And to do that, you have to have influence. So we do that, my team and through my agency, we do that through a few key ways. We schedule podcast tours to get greater exposure. We do bestseller book launches, social media growth, and also secure features in major publications. And we do that all through a very specific strategy using my D6 method, so that you're getting the right exposure, driving that traffic to the right place to make an impact, and then ultimately you can monetize that.
So the D6 method is, you own that copyright or that.
Right.
Okay. That is your method.
Right. I created that.
How much can you share without giving away any kind of trade secrets or intellectual capital?
Oh, I'll give the all 6 steps, because the fact is, unless you're working with me, you won't know how to execute it properly. But it's going to give you value, at least in what that framework looks like. So D6 came from how I built my brand. And those steps are: discover. This is where you dig into your story. And I have a real specific framework, I call it the 3 golden pillars, for how you construct your story. This is so that you know how to tell your story to any audience, whether it's 6 people or 6,000 people. Then we determine who your audience is and what is the most value to them based on what your story is and what will resonate. Then we develop content around that. Then we deploy that content strategically to the platforms where they're paying attention. Then we create a strategy for you to deepen what I call the relationship equity through whether it's a Facebook group or an email list or growing a list if you don't have one. And then finally, how do we leverage everything and identify new opportunities for you to dominate within your niche. And at every phase of that, there are specific frameworks and processes that I teach to execute. So the overall strategy is very simple, but once we dive into it, it's very, very intricate in terms of the execution, which is why it's so powerful.
You are bringing credibility to this platform. You're bringing credibility. You bring that mind-body connection. You actually walk the walk. You're cashing those checks that your mind's writing with your body. And you have that insatiable quest for learning. I'm going to wrap it with this. I've got two more for you. This is something that's a lost art. And you have the discipline, the habit to do this. And I think it's why you're so eloquent. I think it's why you're able to be so diverse and connect with so many different people. You read. You read. It's a habit.
Oh, yeah.
We don't read anymore. We consume garbage. We consume shit, and it's garbage. And we're listening to the latest guru tell us how to do something. We really are lost. But
Yeah.
you're reading. How important is it to pick up a book once in a while or get on your Kindle and read something that can bring you value that you can export from what you import?
It is. I mean, it's like breathing. It's like exercise. It's like food. I mean, reading is to your mind what eating food is to your body.
Yeah.
I read a book every single week. Literally, I read a full book a week, and I do that in 30 minutes a day. I've prioritized it, made it part of my life. I have an app where I track it. I have an accountability partner who I send it to, and he checks me. Hey, did you read today? Okay, are you hitting your goals? No. Okay, you got to get that done. Because I realize it's not just about information and knowledge. Once I take that in, I have to execute that.
Yeah.
So I always read based on what my next level or step of execution is. Everything I'm reading is to immediately implement it. If I have a book on my shelf that doesn't align with what I'm doing right now or isn't timely, I don't read that book. I find one that does. So right now I'm reading a book on making money. I just finished a book on Superfans by Pat Flynn. So I mean, here's the context. I'm a high school dropout, freshman year with a GED, and dropped out of 3 colleges. I had, up until my 20s, I'd only read one full book. That was in like 3rd grade, The Incognito Mosquito. I remember the book because it was only one. But I have a PhD level education when it comes to branding and marketing because I picked up a book and I picked up another book and I studied and I educated myself. And this is where most people fail. They don't read and they don't educate themselves. They think, well, I went to school, I got educated, I have a degree. Well, great. Now you got to go and actually learn something.
That's tremendous. It is. It's Abe Lincoln-like to me because education is ongoing. Education is
absolutely.
The minute you stop learning is the minute you start to perish. And I mean, intellectually, and then the rest is just an existence. It's not a life. Let me close it with this one last takeaway. And I want you to just go ahead and go for it on this one. At the end of time, you've done so many things, you've affected so many lives, and now it's time for you to say goodbye to this earth and go on to the next life. What would you write for those people? What would you leave behind in one paragraph for those people to make a difference in their life? What would be the A.J. Adams takeaways?
The takeaway would be this simple phrase, and I live by this phrase in terms of legacy. Build something worth being known for, leave something worth being remembered for. That describes every great leader, from Martin Luther King to Jesus to Mother Teresa to any world leader, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, whoever you want to think of. They built something worth being known for, and they left something worth being remembered for.
Man, that's just like a mic drop. He's my special guest. If you don't follow him and don't listen to him, I think you're missing out on something very, very big. He's A.J. Adams, and it was my honor, my pleasure, and I learned a lot today from you. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.